Family Ties wasn't just a sitcom, it was a reflection of a changing America, capturing the humor, love, and growing pains of a family caught between tradition and transformation. With its unforgettable characters and heartfelt storytelling, it became a beloved staple of 1980s television. But while the Keaton family lives on in our memories, some of the talented actors who brought those stories to life have sadly passed away. In this emotional tribute, we look back on the lives, careers, and tragic losses of the Family Ties cast, remembering the laughter they gave us and the legacies they left behind. River Jude Phoenix was born on August 23, 1970, in Madras, Oregon, a town as quiet and forgettable as the boy tried not to be. Raised in poverty by nomadic, idealistic parents who once belonged to a controversial cult, River's earliest memories weren't of stability or warmth, but of singing on street corners for food and sharing cramped living spaces with too many siblings and too little certainty. From this soil of hardship bloomed a boy who seemed too fragile for the world's weight. His gift was undeniable. By the age of 13, River was starring in films and quickly garnered attention not only for his ethereal presence but for the aching, haunted truth he brought to every role. When he appeared in Family Ties in 1985 as Eugene Forbes, a lonely math prodigy desperate to belong, it wasn't so much a performance as a mirror. River understood the burden of being gifted while feeling endlessly out of place. That guest appearance offered a brief but piercing glimpse of his soul, shy, overwhelmed, and quietly unraveling behind intelligent eyes. Fame did not soothe his wounds, it only deepened them. Beneath his rising star was a gnawing inner despair, a craving to feel normal, grounded, or at peace. He became known for his intensity, for the way he immersed himself in characters as if trying to escape himself. But the industry, seductive and merciless, devoured his innocence faster than he could protect it. Behind closed doors, River struggled with drug use, despite his image as clean and principled. He hated hypocrisy, and yet he lived it, adored for his purity, even as he drowned in the same darkness he tried to save others from. There was no scandal, only sadness, an aching quietness in his voice when he spoke about fame, or his family, or the environment he wished he could heal. His romantic life was a blur of whispers and stolen moments. Though linked with actress Martha Plimpton in a deeply emotional, on-and-off relationship, River seemed forever elsewhere, too restless to stay, too fragile to hold. Love was never enough to anchor him. On October 31, 1993, outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles, River Phoenix collapsed on the pavement and died from a drug overdose at just 23 years old. The boy with oceans in his eyes was gone, and the world barely had time to understand him. His net worth at the time of death was approximately $5 million, but none of it could shield him from the consuming sorrow he carried. River burned fast and bright, a comet across the night sky, too beautiful, too brief, and too broken to last. Willie Garson was born William Garson Passament on February 20, 1964, in Highland Park, New Jersey. From early on, life didn't grant him the ease he gave others through laughter. The only child of Muriel and Donald Passament, Willie found companionship not in siblings but in imagination, a defense against the loneliness of a home where emotions were rarely spoken aloud. His father was distant, his mother overworked. Acting became his shelter, the stage his escape hatch from a reality that felt cold and incomplete. By the time he appeared on Family Ties in 1985, playing a forgettable character named Nick in the episode Paper Chase, Willie had already mastered the art of blending in, both on screen and off. His character was brief, quirky, and awkward, a reflection of how Willie often felt in the real world. Even in roles that seemed lighthearted, there was always a current of sadness beneath the humor. He wasn't trying to steal scenes, he was trying to be seen. Despite a steady stream of TV roles, Willie never broke into leading man territory. He was the trusted sidekick, the eccentric friend, the comic relief. On Sex and the City, he became Stanford Blatch, funny, loyal, and secretly aching. Audiences loved him, but few knew how much he related to the loneliness of the roles he played. He once said that being gay on screen, while not being openly gay in public for much of his life, left him suspended between two identities. He was everyone's confidant, but no one truly saw him. Willie never married. Instead, he adopted a son, Nathan, in 2009, a decision rooted not in a desire for legacy, but in the need to give someone the emotional presence he never had as a child. He loved fiercely, if quietly, pouring into his son the attention he often lacked in his own upbringing. In 2021, during filming for the Sex and the City reboot, and just like that, Willie was privately battling pancreatic cancer. He kept his diagnosis secret from most, smiling through pain so that the show, and life, could go on. He died on September 21, 2021, at the age of 57, in Los Angeles. His death stunned fans who had seen him just weeks earlier, still acting, still smiling. Willie Garson's net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $10 million. But what he left behind was far richer than money, a legacy of quiet resilience, of humor that masked sorrow, and of a man who lived in the margins but touched the center of so many hearts. Richard Venture was born Richard Charles Venturella on November 11, 1923, in New York City, a place where noise filled the streets, but silence haunted many homes. His early life was marked not by abundance but by absence. His father, a stern Italian immigrant, worked endlessly, rarely speaking. His mother, sickly and frail, passed away when Richard was just a teenager. Grief became his first real companion, and ambition, his only escape. After serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II, Venture returned not to comfort, but to uncertainty. The stage called to him, not for fame, but for clarity. Acting, he once said, was the only place where he could be someone and still feel honest. He took to theater first, grinding through countless auditions, living in cold New York apartments, often wondering if survival was all he'd ever achieve. But he pressed on, stoic and restrained, refusing to let failure stain his resolve. His television work was steady but rarely spotlighted. In 1983, he appeared on Family Ties as Mr. Carlyle, a calculating agent in season 3. The role was brief, almost invisible to most viewers. But to Richard, every role, however small, was a lifeline, a moment where he didn't disappear. That quiet yearning lived in many of his characters, authoritative on the outside, but aching just beneath. Despite marrying 4 times, including to actress Olivia Cole, Venture's personal life was fractured. Love came and went like auditions, sometimes hopeful, sometimes exhausting. His second marriage ended in tragedy when Cole died in 2018, long after they had separated but never truly lost the emotional tether. He had 4 children, but fame and fatherhood rarely fit in the same room. He was present in glimpses, a distant but steady figure, more comfortable in shadows than at family dinners. As he aged, work slowed. He lived modestly, never chasing celebrity, only craft. His later years were quiet, spent reflecting more than performing. His face, recognized by few, carried the weight of 1,000 forgotten characters, each one whispering something he could never quite say aloud in life. Richard Venture died on December 19, 2017, at the age of 94 in Chester, Connecticut. His net worth was estimated to be around $1.5 million, not much by Hollywood standards, but earned with dignity over decades of labor, heartbreak, and perseverance. He didn't leave behind headlines or awards. He left behind something rarer, a legacy of endurance, hidden in the quiet corners of television and film. Doris Balak was born on February 26, 1926, in the Bronx, New York, to Jewish immigrant parents scraping by on factory wages. Their home was cramped and silent most nights, silence not of peace, but of fatigue. From an early age, Doris learned to speak with presence, not because she was heard, but because she had to fight to be noticed. Her parents, cautious and world-weary, urged her toward security. But Doris chased the stage instead, seeking not just applause, but agency. She built her career brick by brick, Broadway, radio, television, enduring countless rejections, whispered sexism, and the condescending gaze reserved for women who talked too loudly. Yet Doris never lowered her voice. With her commanding face and unyielding posture, she became the embodiment of tough, no-nonsense authority figures, typecast perhaps, but never diminished. In the early 1980s, she appeared on Family Ties in the episode Fabric Smarts as Mrs. Willis, a stern, stylish guest who tried to school the Keaton family on the rules of business and image. The role was small, but it was Doris distilled, precise, sharp, but carrying something unsaid beneath every line. What viewers didn't see was the growing weight she bore, of being taken seriously, of aging in a youth-obsessed industry, of loving the craft but resenting its coldness. Behind her professional strength lived private sorrow. Though she married producer Philip Rose, they remained childless, a reality she accepted outwardly but mourned in her quieter years. Friends said she buried herself in work, fearing what stillness might reveal. Her marriage endured, but often at the cost of vulnerability. She gave her warmth to her roles more easily than to her own heart. Doris rarely found mainstream fame. She was always the character actress, always the second name on the call sheet. Yet her performances lingered long after the credits rolled, steel-edged with melancholy, strength-laced with fatigue. She died on October 4, 2011, at the age of 85, in New York City. Her net worth at the time of her passing was approximately $2 million. It wasn't wealth that defined her legacy, but endurance. Doris Bilac was never anyone's star, but she lit up every scene she entered, carrying generations of women's frustrations and fire in each word she spoke. Shirley Prestio was born on August 18, 1947, in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city known for its color and music, though her childhood was neither. Raised in a deeply conservative Catholic household where laughter was often quieted and ambition viewed with suspicion, Shirley grew up learning how to smile through disapproval. Her parents worked hard but loved quietly, and Shirley, always the brightest spark in the room, often dimmed her light to fit in. Drawn to performing from a young age, Shirley left behind her Southern roots to study acting at California State University. It was there that she began peeling away the layers of silence imposed on her girlhood. She wasn't after fame, she was chasing freedom. The stage became her oxygen, a place where her voice could ring out without fear of being too much. Throughout the 1980s, Shirley made numerous guest appearances on sitcoms and dramas. She was a familiar face, warm, reliable, and witty. On Family Ties, she played Ms. Preston, a substitute teacher who challenged the Keaton kids with dry humor and a firm sense of fairness. She appeared in multiple episodes during the show's run, never as a main character but always memorable. Her performances had a grounded charm, often masking the exhaustion of a woman who had spent years fighting to be taken seriously in a world that dismissed funny women as background noise. Success came slowly and unevenly. She never had the breakout role, never the magazine covers. Instead, she navigated the uncertain world of television as a supporting player, overworked, often undercredited, and quietly heartbroken each time a lead role slipped away. But she never stopped showing up, both on set and in life, even as the roles became scarcer and the calls less frequent. Shirley married late in life and kept her personal affairs private. There were no tabloid romances, only whispers of a long-term partner she deeply loved but lost to illness. The pain stayed with her, though she wore it gently. She had no children, only nieces and godchildren to whom she gave her softest self. In her later years, Shirley faced her toughest battle yet, cancer. Diagnosed in the early 2000s, she fought quietly and privately, refusing to let the illness define her. But time, relentless and unkind, wore her down. She passed away on October 27, 2011, in Los Angeles, at the age of 64. At the time of her death, Shirley Prestio's net worth was estimated at around $1 million. A modest figure by Hollywood standards, but every cent earned through grit, grace, and years of persistence. She was never a household name, but she lived a life of dignity, delivering laughter through pain and choosing kindness even when the world gave her so little. Rosanna Huffman was born on August 12, 1938, in Timberland, Pennsylvania, a town so small it barely made maps. Yet for Rosanna, even that narrow world felt vast with loneliness. Her family was modest, her parents working class and emotionally distant, caught up in the daily churn of survival. She found solace not in people but in stories. She memorized lines from radio plays, whispered monologues into her pillow, and dreamed of escaping to a place where words meant more than silence. In the 1960s, Rosanna moved to New York to study at Carnegie Mellon, where she honed her voice, soft, controlled, but aching. Her move into acting was slow, more out of necessity than ambition. She didn't seek the spotlight, but she could not live without expression. She found work in episodic television and voice acting, and though she rarely played leads, she gave each role the weight of a tragedy quietly born. In the 1980s, she made several guest appearances on Family Ties and related crossovers like Hill Street Blues, where she slipped into her roles like old coats, familiar, unflashy, but perfectly fitted. Viewers may not have remembered her name, but they felt her presence. She played wives, nurses, neighbors, the kinds of women real people saw in mirrors. But behind her calm demeanor lived the ache of a woman overlooked, both on screen and in life. Her marriage to actor Richard Levinson, co-creator of Columbo, seemed idyllic from the outside. But when he died unexpectedly in 1987, Rosanna's world collapsed inward. She never remarried. Friends said she lived in his shadow long after he was gone, her grief something she wore like a second skin. She kept acting, though less frequently, choosing comfort over ambition. Rosanna never chased fame, and perhaps that's why it eluded her. She lived quietly, far from red carpets and headlines, working until her health began to falter. In her final years, she withdrew from public life, not out of bitterness, but out of a quiet resignation. She had given the industry her best, even when it only asked her for a fraction. She died on May 20, 2016, in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 77. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated to be around $800,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was the sum of decades of steady work, each dollar earned with dignity, each role a small defiance against invisibility. Rosanna Huffman was never meant to be a star. But she was something rarer, a woman who endured, who softened hard stories with compassion, and who proved that even quiet lives leave echoes. John Hancock was born on March 4, 1941, in Hazen, Arkansas, in a segregated America where opportunities for a young black boy with big dreams were almost non-existent. His parents, both factory laborers, lived under constant financial strain. The household was ruled by long hours and quiet exhaustion. John, a large, thoughtful child, learned early that his size made him visible, but his voice didn't. Acting became the only space where he could be heard without interruption. He carried himself like a mountain, solid, imposing, but inside was a man constantly wrestling with doubt and grief. After studying at Wayne State University, John eventually broke into television and film, bringing to every performance a careful balance of authority and soul. His booming voice made casting directors remember him. His gentle eyes made audiences feel him. He appeared on Family Ties throughout the 1980s, beginning in 1983, portraying Gus Thompson in a recurring role. Gus was a kind-hearted, blue-collar worker, always ready with practical wisdom. John imbued him with warmth and subtle humor, but also sadness, because John himself knew what it was to carry burdens in silence. He never stole a scene, but he grounded everyone he was in. Off-screen, however, John struggled to find peace. He was deeply private, often retreating into himself between shoots. His weight, which became part of his casting identity, also became a physical and emotional burden. Though married, his personal life was marked by long periods of emotional withdrawal. The roles he played, gentle giants, wise mentors, were sometimes cruel mirrors to the isolation he felt in real life. He longed to be seen for who he was beneath the voice and stature, but Hollywood rarely looked past type. Despite steady work, John never broke into stardom. He worked in silence, often underpaid, always professional. His health began to deteriorate in the late 1980s, a reality he kept hidden. Like many actors of color in his era, he had learned not to show weakness, only strength. On October 12, 1992, during the filming of a sitcom pilot, Love and War, John Hancock died suddenly of a heart attack. He was only 51. His death came quietly without fanfare, just as he had lived. His estimated net worth at the time was around $500,000. Modest, considering the decades he had given to an industry that rarely gave back. John Hancock left behind no scandals, no fame chasing. Only performances shaped by depth, dignity, and a quiet, aching humanity. He was a man who spent his life making others feel seen, even while he himself remained in the shadows. Ben Piazza was born on July 30, 1933, in Little Rock, Arkansas, into a strict Italian-American Catholic family where tenderness was rare and expectations loomed large. His father, a butcher, ruled the house with quiet authority, while his mother tended to the family's needs with a kind of wearied grace. Early on, Ben realized he didn't fit into the mold that was carved out for him. Too sensitive, too thoughtful, too different in ways he couldn't yet name. The world felt like a play he hadn't been cast in properly, so he rewrote the script in his head and found acting as the only space where he could breathe. Ben emerged in the theater first, commanding the Broadway stage with a haunted elegance. He was not a showman but a craftsman, respected for his intensity and emotional honesty. Yet as the years passed and film replaced theater as the country's obsession, Ben found himself increasingly pushed to the sidelines. He played fathers, lawyers, ministers, the familiar faces in the background of stories that weren't his. On Family Ties, he appeared multiple times in 1984 in roles like Mr. Wirtz and Ed Nelson, always bringing a quiet gravitas that elevated scenes far beyond their scripted purpose. But the applause never lasted long. Privately, Ben battled lifelong feelings of isolation. He was gay in an era when being so publicly could end a career. The secrecy weighed on him, not out of shame, but exhaustion, constantly performing even when off stage. Though he had a long-term partner, Wayne Tripp, their relationship had to exist mostly in private shadows. The tension between visibility and invisibility gnawed at Ben's soul. He longed to be seen completely but feared the consequences of honesty in a world that prized illusion. Ben was also a writer, a quiet observer of life's contradictions. He published poetry and plays that rarely reached wide audiences but revealed the aching truth behind his carefully composed face. His creative output was steady, but success remained elusive. The industry saw his talent but never gave him a center stage. In his later years, Ben's health declined, worsened by cancer. Still, he kept working, if not on film, then in his notebooks, seeking meaning in the margins. He died on September 7, 1991, at the age of 58, in Sherman Oaks, California, of AIDS-related complications. The world moved on quickly, as it so often did with quiet men. At the time of his death, Ben Piazza's net worth was estimated at around $700,000. But numbers could never capture what he carried. The weight of invisibility, the longing for truth, the strength it took to live a life of quiet defiance. Ben didn't need to be famous. He just needed to be known. And in his best moments, through the ache and the shadows, he was. James Karen was born Jacob Karnofsky on November 28, 1923, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, the son of a Russian-born grocer. His family lived above their small store during the Great Depression, where every dollar was sacred and every dream suspect. His childhood was one of muted hunger, not always for food, but for attention, for affection, for permission to be something more. Quiet, observant, and often overlooked, young James found his salvation in storytelling. Theater became the one place where silence broke and yearning was allowed. Karen's journey to acting was a hard one. After a brief stint at the neighborhood playhouse in New York, he climbed the industry ladder with grit, not glamour, mostly character roles, always supporting, rarely seen for the leading man he was in heart and craft. He became known as that guy in dozens of films and shows. In 1983, he appeared on Family Ties as Philip Keaton, Elise's mother's charming yet somewhat awkward boyfriend. The role, while brief, reflected a recurring theme in his work, the man who tries to belong, but never quite fits. Though Karen often played establishment figures, bankers, lawyers, executives, he lived with a constant sense of being an outsider. His professional success never erased the feeling that he was merely passing through the rooms of real power. His face became a fixture in cult classics like Poltergeist and The Return of the Living Dead, where he portrayed characters who unraveled slowly, carrying unseen burdens. It mirrored his own life, a man who smiled generously but bore quiet disappointments. His first marriage ended in divorce, the demands of his craft slowly eroding the intimacy that once bound it. Later, he married Alba Francesca, and though the relationship brought more stability, he remained haunted by the emotional distance his work had required. Fame, when it came too late and too gently to fill the gaps that had long since hardened into solitude. Karen continued to act well into his 80s, not for money, though he never amassed great wealth, but because the stage still gave him meaning. His performances were full of restrained power, like a man who had learned to mourn in whispers. He rarely spoke of personal regrets, but friends said he often lingered too long at cast parties, reluctant to let the lights go out. James Karen died on October 23, 2018, in Los Angeles, just shy of his 95th birthday. His estimated net worth was around $2 million. It was never about riches. It was about presence, his ability to take the smallest role and make it unforgettable. James Karen didn't chase the spotlight. He lit the corners. And in doing so, he reminded us that some of the most lasting performances are the ones that live quietly in the background, where truth is too real to be loud. Which character from Family Ties, TV series 1982 to 1989, holds a special place in your heart? How does it make you feel knowing that some of the beloved cast members are no longer with us? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. If you've been enjoying this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.